Hey guys, Braden with Outdoor Mainly, bringing you a head-to-head knife review. Today I wanted to kind of explore the differences and the purpose for buying a Salt 1, a Spyderco Salt 1, or a Delica 4 full flat ground. So, a couple things to note. This Salt 1 has been used quite a bit more than this Delica. I've had a few Delicas. This is a brand new one I just got. And I kind of got it in the green to match the color of this salt for this video. This salt, or the Spyderco Salt series, at least the Salt 1, they typically come in two colors, a black FRN or a yellow, like a safety FRN. And what you can do if you get the yellow version is you can put it in RIT fabric dye, and you can turn it into different colors, and that's basically what I did. I put it into like a royal blue, and it kind of came out this semi-greenish color, and so that's what this is. And the Delica 4 actually comes in a ton of different colors, quite a few. I believe, to say a few, green, brown, blue, orange, purple, black, red. Excuse me, not red. And this green, obviously, and a gray, as well as the special edition colors. There are some red ones out there where people have swapped out the FRN on these with the trainer, the Delica trainer, and they'll just put the scales on from the trainer, and then you have kind of a red Delica. There's also an all-black Delica. This is one of Spyderco's most popular knives between this and the Endura. And the Spyderco Delica, as such, being one of their most popular knives, has many versions or iterations of the design. This is the most recent one, the full flat ground one. And full flat grinding, if you're unfamiliar with the term, means that basically from the top here, the top of this spine, all the way down to this bevel here where the edge starts, is all one continuous taper. And then you have the very bottom bevel. And that's in opposition to a saber grind or a hollow grind, which are almost the same, but a little bit different. This one right here being a hollow grind. This one is where the spine starts at a specific thickness, and it goes down to a point, and then from that point it starts tapering down into the edge, and that's your typical grind that you see on most pocket knives. The reason for the two different grinds is this one has more strength because there is more steel, versus this one has better slicing capacity and is a little bit more delicate on the flip side because of the lack of steel. But this one is definitely a better slicer because of the edge geometry. So that to kind of jump us into our comparison, let's talk about these two blades. Obviously, this isn't going to be a heads-up comparison, but I tried to grab the best of both worlds, which means that I tried to get the best salt that I could, and I tried to find the best Delica that I could. And that means that I got the salt in serrated, all serrated blade. So that's another, and I'll kind of detail that here in a second. But the reason why this is all serrated is because it's made from H1 steel. You can kind of see the H1, the lasering that they've done. Also, most Spydercos are stamped right below the right above the handle here with which steel it is. This one's H1 Spyderco. This is made in Seki City, Japan. So H1 steel, from what I have read and from what I have used and seen from it, it is a work hardening steel. There is no carbon in the steel, or there is so little carbon that it will not rust, and that is why this is called the salt. You can take this into salt water or any sort of freshwater environment or saltwater maritime environment, and feel free to use it like you would another knife. You can carry this in your pocket and leave this in for days. It will be fine. Some of the other hardware on the blade as well, the clip itself is titanium, so no worries about that. Most of the other hardware on this is stainless, so potentially it could rust out. But the actual blade itself and the cutting edge is made from H1, which is a very fancy steel. It's a cold press steel, which means that it is not heat treated, from the way I understand it. Which means that they take this big piece of steel and they just compress it with just pure weight to get the shape that you have now. Of course, they will cut it into certain shapes, with water jets and whatnot, but they will not heat treat this to a specific degree. This is just purely compressed. So, getting back into what that means for you. The reason why I got the serrations, because this blade is work hardening. The serrations, from what I have read and what I have experienced, need very little maintenance. This knife will keep on cutting and cutting and cutting because of the steel and also because of the serrations. Also, to sharpen this steel, since it is work hardening, that means the Rockwell hardness is always going up and up and up, meaning it's going to be harder to sharpen every time. In essence, and like that's what it means theoretically. When you actually sharpen it, it's probably about the same, but that's supposed to be what happens. And serrations are very easy, especially on the Spyderco Sharp Maker. Basically, you just take it, run it down the actual side that the serrations are cut into about 3 times, run it on the other side once, 3 times, once, 3 times, once, and you do that probably about 10 times, and it's sharp as it came out of the box. And these serrations are nasty. I really love, this is Spyderco's proprietary serrations are called the Spider Edge, and that's what this is. Now, that's kind of where the comparisons start to splay out. The salt is made for one specific purpose, and that's utility. The tip of the nose is very blunted. It's almost a sheep's foot-esque blade. The deployment hole is quite a bit larger than the Delica's hole, and you can kind of see, if I were to put them like that, you can see just a bit of metal on the inside where the Delica is smaller. And there are a couple other designs that this salt actually grabbed from the Delica. The salt was, so the Delica, like I said, this is being one of the most popular knives. In its infancy, the Delica started out looking a lot like this. It had the same clip, it had the same system for mounting left or right side, it even had the same volcano grip. And the volcano grip is the texturing that is on the FRN. Now the Spyderco Delica has this is the bidirectional texturing. This is what most of the newer Spydercos are coming out with now. It's kind of like a volcano grip, but it's also angled. So basically what that means is that each of these, normally the volcano grip is all just flat. However, on this one, they're all angled at a slight cant, probably, like 15 degrees or so. So it will actually bite into your finger as you hold on it, and it holds from any which way you want. And so there's been a lot of research development. Obviously, the clip has changed to a more secure situation. This clip right here, just the one big thumb screw or the one big Phillips screw, I've had issues with coming loose. However, it is nice that I can just unscrew this with 2 coins and tighten it down. That's probably why it's come loose. But I definitely like this more refined clip on the Delica a lot more. For the specific kind of knife. This one right here being a more working knife, like serrations for cutting rope, that's going to be, or kelp, or other sorts of, materials, that's going to be a lot more useful for this kind of knife. This kind of knife right here, the Delica, is going to be a lot more EDC-esque. That means you're going to be a lot more fine slicing, maybe some food prep, maybe some, opening of some mail, paper, stuff like that, digging out splinters. That's where this delicate point, plain edge, and very refined looking blade is going to come into play. It is a really nice blade to look at. I've been really digging on the Delicas for quite some time now and thought, hey, let's break this guys out into their own review. Let's go over some specs real quick just to kind of get that out of the way so you guys know what the situation is here. So the Delica weighs 2.3 ounces and the Salt weighs 2 ounces. Now you might ask, okay, why is that such a drastic difference? And I mean, 0.3 ounces isn't a huge drastic difference, but for the size of the knife, literally they are almost the same size. Overall length, they are almost identical. The Salt has a little bit longer blade, shorter handle, versus the Delica has a longer handle, shorter blade. But in the end, they come out to about a wash on the length. Now, the reason for the weight is the Salt does not have liners in it. And by liners, I mean the actual pieces of steel inside the handle. This is all just FRN except for the locking mechanism. That is the only piece of steel, as well as the hardware to put the knife together beyond the blade and the pocket clip. But there's no other steel inside the knife. It's all just FRN scales. That's all it is. That's all the rigidity that you would need. And I've found that FRN scales, as they come, are plenty strong. To break these guys, I mean, this is the same kind of stuff that polymer pistols, or just magazines that come in modern pistols, just any pretty much modern polymer pistol is made of the same stuff. It's all fiberglass reinforced nylon in one form or another. So to break this, you'd really have to be abusing this or really torquing on it. You'd have to try to break this, I feel like. I've never seen or heard of anyone breaking this stuff within normal, use, even some pretty strenuous use. So as compared to this one does have liners. As you can see, you can kind of see the lip and the holes inside of there. Since the knife is so slim, you can barely see in there, but you can kind of see the liners in there. I feel that Spyderco did a great job with these liners because they are milled out, which means that there are some big holes cut into the liners. It's not just one piece of steel set inside the FRN. They milled out as much steel as they could to keep the weight down, so they only add 0.3 ounces. And the reason they put those liners in there is just for structural integrity and rigidity of the blade. So if you have this stuck into like a cardboard box and you're prying left to right, or just on the horizontal axes, it's going to hold a little bit better. But I mean, honestly, for the kind of blade that these are, I don't feel that it's totally necessary. And it should be noted that the previous versions of the Delica did actually not have liners. They pretty much came in this handle, a little bit longer, a little bit different, but it was this exact design. Slap the Delica blade on there with a smaller deployment hole and a pointed tip, and you pretty much got the same knife. So the Salt is essentially a spawn off of the Delica. They run in at around the same price. The Delica does come in the saber grind as well as the full flat grind, as well as all the beautiful colors. It also comes in different steels. And it also comes in a G10 handle as well, which is a very, very sought after blade. They only made the G10 versions for a short time, and they are pretty sought after now, and they've increased quite a bit in price. If you want to find one, you'll have to go to the secondary market like eBay, Amazon, or just people you know. So it also comes in a couple other steels. So you have VG10. You also have some other harder steels. You have ZDP. You also have Super Blue, as well as a couple other just exotic steel runs that they've put the Delica through. The Spyderco Salt pretty much just comes in H1 because that is Spyderco's proprietary rust-resistant blade. And I've really enjoyed having this H1 knife. It has lasted me a long time, and it has been through some awesome situations. And I love that I'm able to carry a knife into the sea. I mean, I guess I kind of have an irrational fear that maybe my feet will get stuck on some seaweed. I've kind of been stuck in a flow before, one of those jetties that kind of pulls you out, and if my feet were to get tangled up in some seaweed, I'd be able to get myself free. Whereas with this, if I brought this into the ocean, probably 30 minutes, you'd already start to see pitting. VG10 is definitely a great steel. It has, obviously, carbon content as opposed to this guy. This guy's just loaded up with chromium, which is just a product that you put into the steel amalgam just to make it, give it certain properties, amongst others, manganese, whatever else you want to put in there. That's how you get the different steels. But the VG10 is a great steel. It takes an edge very nicely. It is, it holds it very well as also. And the resistance to moisture, sweat and everything like that, since you're going to be carrying this in your pocket every day, is phenomenal. I mean, I've never really had any pitting on this guy. I try to take care of this one. I was trying to make sure that at least you guys saw a decent representation of the Spyderco Delica while I put it on camera before I start really banging into the pocket clip. The paint on the pocket clips with any knife you get, unless it's, a material I'm not aware of, unless it's an all-plastic clip that's just dyed black, so whenever you take chunks out of it or scratch it against stuff, it's just black underneath. All the pocket clips are going to get worn. They'll eventually end up looking like this, or just totally shiny silver. This guy, I mean, I've only carried this specific model, not my other Delicas, in my pocket for, I don't know, like a week, and, just by bumping into stuff, just by rubbing on other things, being in a drawer with other knives, the paint comes off, and it's unfortunate, but it's what it is. You can take these knives apart as well. It's just, a single on this side, and then these guys also, are just the butt ends. So you just put your driver in there, unscrew it. You can take the whole knife apart, clean it all out. I would recommend not doing that. It's kind of a pain to put it together again because it's just lining everything up, making sure it fits, and you also want to Loctite the pivot when you do take it apart, put it back together, just to make sure that you get that nice, smooth work. Anyways, these are both great blades. The locking system, these are both martial arts rated locks, which means that they're able to withstand way higher the amount of pressure than would ever be necessarily put on these blades. But it is a good peace of mind to know that your locks are going to withstand any sort of abuse that you're going to put towards them. They are both the David Boy detent locks, which means that they have that little groove cut out of it so it doesn't really bite into your finger when you use it, and it's real soft. There's no harsh transitions on the locks, on the lock bars themselves, which makes it a very pleasurable experience. They're both very light knives. Like I said, around 2 ounces. I mean, that's crazy. You can't beat it. The Spyderco Salt, a couple other things that are different. On the actual FRN handle itself, there is no jimping. Versus the Spyderco Delica, there is jimping on the handle, on the top of the FRN. It goes from about, you can see right there, it goes from about the blade all the way back to almost the lock bar. And there is jimping on both blades. Let's see if I can capture that here. So you see the jimping on the back of the Delica, the jimping on the back of the Salt. And they are both pretty much beyond that identical. They're both the same size. They serve the same purpose, essentially. I would have no problem carrying each for EDC. Obviously, the H1's a little bit, or the Spyderco Salt's a little bit more specialized as far as what you can do with it, where you can bring it. And but the Delica, I mean, it's an overall outstanding blade. If you're just going to take a knife camping, if you're going to want to stick a knife in your pocket every day, this is a great blade. This also comes in around let's see, the blade length is about 2.8 inches, which is perfect for a lot of restrictive knife laws that are around the country these days. So I think Chicago's actually 2 inches now, which is just plain crazy. But like I know that Portland City in Oregon has a sub 3-inch knife law. This right here would be the knife. This one right here comes in at 3 inches, the blade. So depending on the officer you get, this may be, construing as you violating that city ordinance. But this one right here comes well under, 0.2 inches under. So, that's going to be definitely a plus, 1/5 of an inch under what they construe as illegal or going to be a weapon. Now, to seal the deal here and kind of finish up these reviews, let's kind of talk about these as weapons. The Spyderco Delica comes in a trainer version. And a trainer version is essentially... so much phlegm. A trainer version is essentially a knife or just a something shaped pretty much exactly like this that has a totally dull blade. And it comes cut out a little bit so you have the same weight, the same feel, and it is essentially the same thing as this knife, except for it's marked with a nice bright red FRN, and like I said, that totally smooth blade surface. And the reason why they made the trainer is because there's a guy, Michael Janik, I think is his name, Yannick Janich, I don't know. He is a martial arts expert, the resident one for Spyderco, and he believes that this is perfect for, it's not perfect, but I mean, it is well suited for self-defense. As far as slashing, stabbing, thrusting, cutting, any ways like that, this knife is going to perform. And so they offer the trainer to practice with it, to make sure that you are skilled with it in that essence, and you can take it into your training environment. The things that you train with are going to be the things you're most familiar with, and you're going to be a lot more proficient with when or if the time comes that you need to use it in that situation. The Salt, with its blunted tip, I do not feel that this is the best self-defense knife or a knife that you could use in a critical situation like that. Serrations, from what Michael Janik had said, especially on baggy clothing, which is kind of an interesting comment, but still an interesting comment, none to say the least. Serrations on baggy clothing actually catch and just pull it all apart and get clogged up with the clothing. So not the best use of a defensive blade. You don't just want to rip all the clothing off the guy. And that's also to say that this blade is pretty much not going to be able to stab as well. I'm sure if you came in at like an interesting thrust like this, kind of in and down, you might be able to puncture, depending on your velocity too. I'm sure you could puncture with this, but it would definitely not be as efficient as this. This would slide right into whatever mediums you need it to go into and just work. This guy right here is the utility blade. And that's pretty much the main difference here. You can get the salt in a plain edge. However, I feel that with H1 steel, serrations fit the purpose for the steel. Serrations are meant for working. They're meant for creating a lot more cutting surface than a plain edge. Because if you measure the distance around each serration, you start from here and work your way around and then mark every single one, you're going to have a lot more cutting area than you would with this. And also serrations with their toothy kind of exterior will bite into and keep cutting well after this one has gone dull and will need resharpening. This guy will actually just keep working and working because every single blade inside of the serrated edge will have its own sharpness and its own burrs or its own characteristics. So it is good to note that there is a small plain edge portion here at the end just for small, really delicate work like getting splinters or perhaps opening, I don't know, a very delicate piece of paper. I don't know, prying. Both of these knives pretty much, as far as prying goes, I mean, they will work. You're never supposed to use a folding knife for prying, but they will work. Both these blades are phenomenal choices. I would definitely recommend you guys go and check them out. If you're definitely the seafaring type or you're going to be living in an area with high moisture content, I would definitely give this a good look. This one's probably going to be a little bit cheaper since it's not as popular as the Delica. But if you're going to be using it every day and maybe knife laws apply to you, or maybe you just want something that's going to be a little bit higher resale value, something that you can hang on to for a long time, something that's a little bit more classic, definitely get the Delica. This is a great blade. I would have no problems taking this anywhere, and this is typically my EDC these days. So anyways, guys, thanks for checking out this review, head-to-head of the Salt 1 versus the Delica 4 full flat grind. If you guys like what you see, please comment, like, subscribe, do your thing. This is Braden with Outdoor Manly. See you guys.